Chapter 16. Some 90 miles south, 30 seconds later. Philadelphia Tower to all aircraft. New York Center reports Newark, LaGuardia, Kennedy, and Westchester are closed by heavy snow and electrical storms causing radio interference. This was the story FAA headquarters had just teletyped to cabs across the country. The purpose of the rapidly improvised fabrication was to avoid, for as long as possible, panic in the skies and on the ground. There was also another reason. It might be possible to contact and peel free some planes on the outer edge of the jamming area where the electronic assault was the weakest. Aircraft inbound to Newark, LaGuardia, Kennedy, and Westchester must divert immediately. The man in the Philadelphia cab continued. Proceed directly to alternates specified in your flight plans. Please check in now for altitude assignments. It wasn't only FAA teams at Philadelphia's airport and others near the electronically besieged New York City area that were relaying the order to divert. From the towers of nearly 200 municipal and armed forces airfields in every part of the nation, controllers were broadcasting similar instructions. So were their colleagues in Canada, Mexico, and the Caribbean. In Miami, Montreal, Chicago, and Boston, airliners already on taxiways were ordered to return to terminals and unload their passengers. In Atlanta, St. Louis, Toronto, and Nashville, irate travelers waiting to board planes grumbled when delayed departures were announced. At Los Angeles International, a graying grandmother who wrote a syndicated column on manners expressed her indignation in a stream of loud and startling obscenities. It was quieter in Wilbur's office in the JFK Tower. The only sounds there came from the cassette player. Delta 103, turn left on. Click. Fast forward gibberish. Click. United 65 Heavy to. Click. More babble. Click. We will knock out your radar. That's him. Malone erupted and reached for the telephone. He dialed the FBI office in Manhattan. Within moments, he was talking to the anti-terrorist agent with whom he'd spoken earlier. This is Malone. I need the secure line to Washington. The Bureau? No. Sea Sweep. The secret U.S. Navy unit, codenamed Sea Sweep, was the American intelligence community's joint library for all data on global terrorism. Its computers held millions of pieces of information from counter-espionage and police organizations around the world. Sea Sweep might have the answer, Malone thought as he waited. Well, one of the answers. 2200. A male voice said suddenly. Standard security procedures. No name, just part of a phone number. I want the senior officer on duty, Malone announced. He heard 3 long buzzes. Then a woman, crisp and Midwestern, spoke. Data control. This is Captain Malone of the New York Police Department. We have a critical situation, and I need an immediate audio probe. Your account number? Don't have one, but you can phone General Sloat at the Pentagon for authorization. I need an account number, she said firmly. This is an emergency. Heavy metal, not a test. We've got a couple of thousand people in goddamn mortal danger. Call the FBI if you want confirmation. I'm sorry, Captain, but I must have an approved number. You're going to be a lot sorrier. I'm taping this conversation. Malone lied. If one person dies because you won't bother to make a call, the tape goes straight to the U.S. attorney. What are you talking about? 10 years for manslaughter. You'll get your fucking number. You'll be wearing it. Well, that's preposterous. I don't make the rules, Captain. But you'll do the time, he predicted. When those pictures of the heaps of bodies hit the newspapers, somebody's going to jail. And it won't be any admiral. You're it, lady. Silence. It might be 15 years, he threatened. She coughed uneasily before she replied. Well, since it's an emergency, she said stiffly, I could check with the FBI while we run the probe. If they authorize use of their number, you'll get the results. Right away, he pressed. I'm ready to roll the tape of the man's voice we need identified. You record all your phone traffic, right? Roll your tape, she ordered curtly. He placed the receiver next to the cassette player and started it. While the tape rolled, he asked Wilbur for the numbers of the phones in this office and the cab. As soon as the terrorist's first conversation with Annie Green ended, the detective turned off the player and recited both numbers to the C-sweep officer so she could call back. Thank you, Captain, she said in a tone of frigid hostility. You realize that we may not have the man's voice in our audio file. Even if it is there, the distortion of a voice delivered over a telephone line could make identification impossible. Well, give it your best shot. We always do, she replied righteously and hung up. As Malone put down the phone, he wondered whether he'd just lost the element of surprise. Number one was a professional at this game and a careful planner. If he knew the FAA system so well, he'd probably scouted the offices too. This room or this phone could be bugged. Number one might have heard the call to C-sweep. He could be listening now. There was no time to search for cunningly concealed microphones. Malone had other things to do, all desperately urgent. He decided to do them elsewhere. Let's go, he said abruptly and started towards the doorway. Where? Why? Wilbur asked. I'd like to know what the hell's going on here. I'll tell you when I find out, Malone promised. Right now, I've got to talk to somebody downstairs. Come on. They took the elevator to the ground floor and hurried through the swirling storm across the open bridge to the International Arrivals Building. Both men were brushing melted snow from their faces as they passed the federal narcotics agents on the balcony. When Malone and the FAA executive reached the top of the stairway, the detective looked down at the noisy crowd in the large chamber below. He scanned the journalists and Hasidim, the Russian woman's family, and scores of others here to meet the inbound travelers. There's our somebody, Malone said, and pointed at a well-dressed man in the throng. He was standing where he often stood, near a television news crew. He looked assured, sincere, and maturely handsome. Barely 5'9", he radiated the authority of a big man. Well, that's Senator Bono, Wilbur exclaimed. Has been for 11 years. Where's the toilet? In the right corner there, at the back. I'll meet you inside in 3 minutes, the detective said, and hurried down the steps. He zigzagged through the crowd warily, trying to avoid any press people who might recognize him. When he spotted a lanky Associated Press photographer who knew him, Malone instantly turned his head. He found himself looking at Bono's media assistant 5 yards away. Sidney Stern's brow was furrowed in concentration, and he was walking quickly. When Malone gestured to him, the publicist waved back, but didn't slow down until the detective blocked his way. "Nice to see you, Captain," Stern said mechanically as he tried to pass. Malone didn't let him. "I have to talk to him right away," Malone announced. "If you'll call the office in the morning." "Now, Sydney. It's life and death for a lot of people. In this state, tonight. He can help save them." "This is for real?" Malone nodded. "We're fighting the clock," he warned the balding press aide. "I'll meet him in the John in 2 minutes." "The John?" "Don't argue with me, Sydney. Do it." Senator Joseph Bono entered the men's lavatory of the JFK International Arrivals Building a minute and 40 seconds later. Stern was with him. Bono glanced around the toilet, shrugged, and looked Malone squarely in the eye. "Well, life and death for a lot of people," he asked bluntly. "Including Mrs. Olitsky," Malone replied. "You might help save them." "I'm listening." Malone described the crisis and Number One's demands. "Unbelievable," Bono said softly and shook his head. "Don't take my word for it," the detective told him. "This is Pete Wilbur. He's federal. He runs the tower here." Wilbur gave his FAA identity card to Bono, who studied it carefully. "It's true," Wilbur blurted. "I don't know how they did it, Senator, but they did." Bono sighed as he returned the ID card. "How can I help?" he asked. Malone took a quarter from his pocket. "Phone the White House immediately," he said, and handed Bono the coin. "If we don't nail these bastards in time, we have to deliver the people they want. 4 of them, Fauzi, Arosa, Lloyd, and Sanchez, are in federal custody in Manhattan. Ask the president to rush them out here at once." "Well, the president may not do it," Stern warned. "He just made one hell of a speech against any deals with terrorists." "And I supported his position the next day," Bono recalled soberly. "Life and death," Malone challenged. "Will you make the call?" Senator Joseph Bono looked at himself in the big mirror, adjusted the knot of his tie, and turned to his media expert. Stern scooped a handful of change from his jacket and gave the money to his employer. "It costs more than a quarter to call Washington," Stern said. "You're pretty damn sure of yourself, Sid," Bono told him. "No, I'm sure about you, Joe." "It will work," Malone predicted. "The president will listen to you, Senator. You're his friend." "Presidents don't have friends," the graying politician replied. "I'll call him, though. Anything else, Captain?" "We'd like to keep this situation secret as long as possible." The senator shrugged and smiled. "Business as usual, Sydney," he said cheerfully. "Let's go talk to the president and calm the media." Bono and Stern left first and went to the nearby row of phone booths. While the senator was speaking to a senior White House aide a minute later, Malone and Wilbur were going up on the escalator. The detective looked down and frowned. "So much for secrets," he said ironically. More people were surging into the International Arrivals Building. There were at least a score of them, all but one male, and most of them in uniforms. They looked bulky in their bulletproof vests. 5 carried submachine guns, while others held shotguns and sniper rifles with the assurance of familiarity. Among those bearing walkie-talkies was a tall and muscular black man who was clearly in command, Lieutenant Benjamin Hamilton of the Port Authority Police. The initial reaction of the startled civilians was shock. Guns, even in the hands of the police, meant danger. What kind? How serious? For several moments the crowd grew much quieter. Then there was a rising surge of sound as scores of worried people asked those questions aloud. Other shaken men and women stared silently at the heavily armed Port Authority force. It was the submachine guns and bulletproof vests that chilled the waiting relatives and thrilled the press people. These police were clearly equipped for battle. With whom? Why? The reporters reacted instantly to the sight of Hamilton's combat-ready unit. Aroused by the prospect of a major shootout that would make a much hotter story than some old woman rejoining her family, graduates of distinguished journalism schools shoved people aside and bulled forward to demand answers from Hamilton. He knew what he had to do. He had to keep the secret for as long as possible. Hamilton ignored the shouted questions as if he didn't hear them. He looked straight ahead as he led his unit towards the elevator. Avoiding eye contact, Lieutenant Benjamin Hamilton coolly pretended that he didn't see the arm-waving reporters. He didn't blink or break stride when 2 of them called out his name. Irritated but undiscouraged, the television crews, radio teams, print journalists, and photographers all pressed forward through the crowd. Hamilton hurried on steadily, moving ahead with a graceful style that made Frank Malone wonder where he'd played football. Hamilton was almost at the elevator when a pretty Haitian woman backed into his way, forcing him to stop. The surging media mob closed in immediately.